If you have been saving and still feel like your account is going absolutely nowhere, you are not crazy. I have lived that. I noticed it over and over. I would put money in, check the balance, and it never seemed to get past maybe $200 at the most. Money went in and it came right back out. Savings started to feel pointless to me. I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do, but there was nothing to show for it. I paid my bills, made ends meet, and still could not get any traction. After a while, you start wondering why you should even bother saving at all. Like, what's the point? What was happening was that my savings had no structure and no purpose. It was just money sitting there, easy to touch and easy to drain. Without a clear role, savings becomes the first place you pull from when something comes up. In today's video, I'm walking through why savings stalls like this and the fix that could actually get it moving again. And step 3 was the major game changer for me. For a long time, savings felt like something I was doing just to say that I did it. I was disciplined enough to try it, but I did not really understand the purpose behind it, if that makes sense. I was in a season where making ends meet felt like the win, right? Bills were paid, nothing was late. On paper, things looked fine, but there was no sense of progress. I believe saving only worked if you had extra money. If income was tight, saving felt slow and almost pointless. Watching small amounts trickle in did not feel motivating, especially when that same money kept getting used to cover things that I did not plan for. Over time, that creates frustration. You start questioning whether savings is even worth your time and attention. What I did not see then was that saving is about your why. Without a clear reason for the money to exist and a system to protect it, savings turns into a holding place instead of a growth tool. That misunderstanding kept me stagnant longer than it needed to. This is where most people will lose traction, even when they are trying to do the right things. When savings has no clear purpose, it tends to stall. That was my experience for a long time. I would put money into savings when things felt manageable, then pull from it as soon as something came up. The balance stayed about the same because there was never an expectation for the money to stay there. At the time, this did not feel like an issue. It felt practical. Bills were paid, nothing was late. I was using the money I had available, right? The problem was that savings did not have a defined role. It was not separated mentally from the rest of my money. It was simply the easiest place to pull from when life happened. And I'm not talking about emergencies. I'm talking about lack of preparation type things. Because of that, savings felt optional. If a bill dropped early, it came out of it. Unplanned expenses came out of it. Things I forgot to account for came out of it. Each situation felt reasonable on its own, but together they kept draining the same account. Over time, savings stopped functioning as protection as it should have been and became the place that filled in the gaps. What finally became clear to me was that I was saving without deciding what the money was meant to do. Since there was no rules around it, savings was always available for something else. The balance never had a chance to build because I never gave it a reason to stick around. Once I decided what savings was for, my behavior changed. I stopped reaching into it for minor issues and inconveniences. I handled timing problems and overlooked expenses elsewhere instead of defaulting to savings. As a result, money stayed in the account longer. Basically, I prepared better for those things that I was going to the savings account to catch what I missed. With fewer withdrawals, the balance began to increase in a way that it never had previously. Savings stopped feeling pointless because I was no longer undoing my own effort. The money stayed put long enough to add up, and savings finally felt more consistent instead of just temporary. For a long time, I treated savings as the account that solved everyday problems, right? If something came up, I pulled from savings and moved on. There was no real pause or decision. It was simply the fastest option available. In that particular habit, it kept my balance from gaining any traction. It was not caused by one major mistake, but by repeated everyday decisions that I was making. A bill that did not line up with my pay, an expense I knew was coming, but I did not prepare for, a month that felt tighter than expected. Each time, savings was there to absorb the impact. Savings became the place that fixed everything that I missed elsewhere. It covered timing issues and planning gaps. Because savings was always there, there was little pressure to adjust how the rest of my money was handled. I could smooth things over and keep going without addressing the underlying issues. The result was predictable. Savings never had time to sit long enough to accumulate. Money went in and it came right back out. The catch-all effect. The balance stayed in the same range month after month because it was constantly being used to patch holes, small problems. What I eventually had to acknowledge was that savings was doing work it was never meant to do. Instead of handling timing more carefully or planning ahead for known expenses, I relied on savings to make things feel manageable. As long as savings played that role, it stayed in the same place. When I stopped using savings to fix everyday money issues, the account started to look different. I paid more attention to timing and planned for expenses that I already knew were coming. Savings stopped being my default solution. With fewer withdrawals, the balance had room to breathe. The account stopped resetting every month and began to finally show some progress. What finally made the difference was deciding ahead of time what savings was allowed to do and what it was not. This was a practical decision I made and followed. I stopped treating savings as a general solution and started treating it as money that came with rules. That meant savings was no longer the place I went for timing issues, forgotten expenses, or small misses. Those problems had to be handled somewhere else by preparing better. Savings stayed put unless it met the reason it was created for. That one change reduced how often money left the account. Once my withdrawals slowed down, I could start seeing some growth there. The money stayed in the account long enough to add up. The balance finally had room to build instead of resetting every time something came up that I did not plan for or that I could have planned for. I was focused on putting money in and not paying attention to how often I was taking it back out. Savings is not just about deposits, it's about protecting what you already saved. If money leaves the account as fast as it arrives, the effort doesn't matter. Growth only happens when savings is allowed to sit long enough to compound on itself. When savings is set up with clear limits, it starts working the way people expect it to. The balance increases, progress is visible. Savings stops feeling pointless and starts feeling reliable because the money is no longer being used for everything else. Here's the part that I had to face without dressing it all up. Saving was not failing me. I was using it in a way that made growth absolutely impossible. I was asking one pile of money to solve problems it was never meant to solve, then wondering why it never felt solid. I also had to accept that consistency alone does not mean progress. I was consistent about putting money in, but I was just as consistent about pulling it back out. That cancels itself out. You can stay busy and still go nowhere. That was hard to admit, but it was necessary. Another truth is that savings feels slow when you keep interrupting it. Every withdrawal resets your timing. Every time I dipped into savings for something that should have been planned for, I pushed the finish line back. Each withdrawal set me back without me noticing it at the time. I also learned that saving does not work when you assume the money will be used soon. If you expect to take it back out, you plan around spending it instead of keeping it, if that makes sense. The account never feels stable because in practice it isn't. This is where things actually change for me. I stopped looking at savings as a backup plan for my weak spots in my money habits. I treated it as something that deserved to be protected, and that required me to clean up the rest of the way that I handled timing, expenses, and decisions. Saving started to feel different once I did that. The balance stopped swinging back and forth and finally started moving in one direction. When the balance was able to be stable, I stopped restarting. I could finally see my progress because I was not undoing my own effort. The truth is, if savings is always available for anything, it will never be available for what you need it for. Growth requires restraint, and that starts with deciding what savings is not allowed to do. Here's how all of this connects. My savings stalled because I had no clear rules for how it was supposed to be used. I was saving without a clear role, using the same money to patch mistakes and undoing my own effort without even realizing it. Once I gave savings clear boundaries, everything else became easier to see. I could tell when timing was off. I could see where expenses were not accounted for. I could tell the difference between a real need and a convenience decision. Savings stopped hiding those issues and started exposing them. The fix was deciding what savings was for and leaving it alone when other things came up. When savings stopped being the solution to every problem, it finally did the one job it was supposed to do. That's why growth felt impossible before and obvious afterward. I stopped pulling money out and the balance started to increase. Here's what I want you to do next. Look at your savings and answer one simple question. What is this money actually for? Not in general, not someday, but right now. If you cannot answer that clearly, that is where the problem starts. Decide what savings is allowed to be used for and what it is off limits for. Write it down if need be. I have to always write things down and make it plain for it to stick with me. Once that decision is made, stop pulling from it for anything outside of that purpose. Handle timing issues, missed expenses, and everyday shortfalls somewhere else, like in your spending plan. Fixing this came down to one thing. I stopped taking money back out of savings once I put it there. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you want simple guidance to help you think through your money more clearly, you can always download the free Your Money Era Starter Guide. It is linked below. I keep it linked there for anyone who would like it. If you want to continue with these simple, practical money systems, watch this playlist right here. You are not behind. You are getting clearer about what has been holding your money back. This is Your Money Era, and I'll see you on the next one.